Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here, just sticking around to discuss the latest news about the new regiments of Renown we will be getting for Total War Warhammer. Um, as I'm sure many of you already saw, the trailer was released and there was a bit of a stream for what the new regiments of Renown will be for all the factions that still don't have them, and they'll be coming out for free as a gift for CA's 30th anniversary. Obviously, they're free if you have the DLC, but Bretonnia's free for everybody, so at least those 6 units will be there, and every other race, and all the other races are getting, each race is getting 6 regiments for Renown, so definitely cool. And there are some new abilities coming out with these regiments of Renown, so that looks definitely interesting. And so yeah, you have to get them. We'll have to get a Total War Access account, but that's fairly easy. You can just sign up on the main page. So I'll be going over what we're supposed to be getting, and just discussing what I think of these units, and also mentioning some of the things that, if you missed the live stream, that are omitted in the list here. So, first of all, we have the Beastmen. I'm going to open up the images here just so we can look at them. We're getting a regiment of Renown, Ungor spears with shields, Bestigors, Gors with shields, Centigors, Cygor, and Minotaurs with shields. So very, very cool units. They look very nice. As you can see, and many of the aesthetics, I think that the aesthetics in general, most of these units, are improved over previous regiments of Renown, by and large. So definitely very nice. And so going right over the stats. Now, immediately here, I'm going to mention, especially when it was like a built-in stat into the units, like damage, attack, or weapon strength or something, then there are a few that got missed here. And this immediately, Destroyers of Drakewald. Very cool names, by the way. I think some pretty nice names there. But the Ungor spears with herds, they also have spear herds with shields have poison. They do have extra melee defense, which is awesome, but they also come with poison attacks, and so I think they're going to be very good at shutting down enemy large for a fairly cheap price, helping control your opponent a bit better, giving you some decent support, and just being a decent support unit, I think, is what it's going to come down to. The Ungor spearmen with spearmen herds are not amazing damage combat-wise, but with poison they can definitely give you some utility against both large and once the melee breaks down, just filling in. If you have issues with enemy heavy infantry or something, the poison will definitely help in softening your opponent's units up. Then the Blackhorn's Ravagers, Goreherd with shields, stock and vanguard deploy, and armor and charge bonus. Like, all of this, I think, is just a boot, and I think these regiments of Renown in general are going to be a big boost. I'm going to discuss this from the level of multiplayer, guys, by the way, because I think for single player it's not going to make too much of a difference, because you can basically do whatever you want in campaign. But for the multiplayer, I think this upgrade, or really with the regiments of Renown, is really going to make Khazrak and his Vanguard deploy strat much more viable against more opponents. Stock, Vanguard, extra armor, charge bonus. It's just made to be vanguarded and made to synchronize with Khazrak's forward Vanguard deploy sort of strategy. Yeah, just very strong. Normally Goreherd isn't able to Vanguard deploy, and it means that your Vanguard units are very squishy. It's Goreherds, it's Ungors, and those can't really hold up very well. Centigors, and none of those have very good survivability, and this will definitely help that, I think. Next unit on the list, Korok's Manrippers, Bestigors with halberds, and this is another thing I've been liking about these new regiments of Renown. They take old units and repurpose them. They'll turn them into a leader unit. They'll turn them into anti-heavy infantry unit, like Bestigors, into a anti-large unit here with halberds. I think that's really cool. I think rather than simply outshining the original unit, like we have with cases like the Silver Bullets, or for example, it's very nice when you get a unit that is a bit of a side grade. It gives you an alternative option. Sort of like we have with the Crimson Killers for the Orcs. So I definitely think this is cool. The bonus versus large charge defense, just going to be a very solid anti-large unit, I think. Basically, like, I'd assume like Chaos Warriors with halberds, maybe a bit better even. So definitely very cool. The Cygor with Warp Gaze, as you probably know from if you watch my stream, I absolutely love my Nets of Mintok. I love my Praevan Ethremos. So being able to immobilize an enemy, especially with Beastmen who are super mobile and could encircle someone caught out of position very, very quickly, this could be very potent. Though you are paying a lot with the Cygor for it. So I think definitely a situationally useful item or unit, just like the Luminarch of Hysh for the Empire, which comes with the Net of Mintok. This comes with the Warp Gaze, so definitely pretty cool. Sons of Goros over here. Centaurs with great weapons. Guardian ability, giving them physical resistance to nearby units, and extra armor. It's actually 70 armor, which is not amazing, but it's definitely, compared to average beastmen armor, it's ridiculously good. And it's comparable to low-end heavy cavalry. Definitely better than, say, the Wood Elf Wild Riders. And combined with the physical resistance, which I assume will also apply to them, just a very solid unit, I think, for giving you better Vanguard deploy options. Magic attacks are pretty cool, since beastmen don't really have the option for them otherwise, but not the most important thing in the world, I don't think. But yeah, I think very cool. The only problem I think with the Bestigors is that beastmen already have a lot of anti-large options, so I'm not entirely sure how useful it will be from that perspective. But still, I think it's a pretty cool unit. Minotaurs with Terror, with the Butchers of Kalkingrad. Terror and Regen. The Regen, as we know, is very good on Cryptars. It's very good on, or it can be good on Trolls. If your opponent shut your Terror out, your Terrify your Trolls away, scare them. But Regen has potential to be very strong ability, and obviously there's a disadvantage with fire, but Minotaurs with shields have silver shields, so they're not going to be taking too much arrow damage normally. And combined with Terror, this could make the Minotaurs very good. Beastmen have a lot of units that cause fear, but they don't have that much that causes terror. So this could definitely make you could force your Minotaurs through the enemy line, or to get a rear charge on them with Terror, or Terrify off their backline, that sort of thing. And all the while absorbing arrows pretty effectively. So I think this could be a very solid unit. Then moving on to Bretonnia. Oh, oops, there we go. So they're getting the Wardens of Montfort, which are these guys, the mounted yeomen archers, sorry. Holy Wardens of Lamai I'm going to be butchering these names. I can't do French. Some other languages, sure, not French though. So Holy Wardens of Lamai running the dual wielding battle pilgrims, Beast Slayers of Bastogne, dismounted squires with polearms, defenders of Fleur de Lis, knights errant with frenzy, and then Knights of the Linehearted, that's a Knights of the Realm variant, and the Companions of Quentinless, a questing knight variant. So most of these are the lower end Bretonnian units, but still very cool to see them in like a Regiment of Renown format. And that could definitely help stiffen up the Bretonnians' cheap unit line otherwise. So first of all, the Beast Slayers of Bastogne. Once again, the foot squares with halberds. I really like this idea of side grading units for a Regiment of Renown. So I think this is pretty awesome. The charge defense versus large, extra defensive stats. I think that, especially in the sort of comps that I've been demonstrating, but also some other comps where you're trying to bring pretty hefty armor piercing or high or armor piercing or higher end for Bretonnians, higher end infantry line. The foot squires with halberds are basically, I think, going to be a bit of the best of both worlds in a mix between foot squires and halberds. They'll give you the armor of the foot squires, and at the same time they will give you that anti-large bonus to the halberds. And obviously they're going to lose that anti-infantry bonus, but still I think very solid unit. Under that, the battle pilgrims dual wielding. I don't think fire and magic attacks, I think they're a bit overrated, honestly. And Bretonnia has a lot of access to magic, so I'm not entirely sure this is that useful. And fire is generally lackluster. Bretonnia can't do kindle flame, so I think fire is not particularly useful against most factions. But the improved defensive stats definitely could be cool. Combined with their innate frenzy, that means that you definitely get a lot of damage out of them, as long as you can keep them alive. And they do drop shields for that second weapon, so that could be a problem against arrow fire because they have very little armor. Then the Companions Quentinless questing knights with fire resistance. Once again, I think fire resistance in general is fairly, on most units, pretty lackluster, because most factions, you're not going to bring fire against Bretonnia usually, unless it's like unintentional, like you're bringing Knights of the Blazing Sun for some reason or something like that. You're probably not bringing fire damage against Bretonnia in a lot of cases, because they don't really have anything vulnerable to fire. But Blessing of the Lady, physical resistance is going to be absolutely, I think, amazing on questing knights. Questing knights are already very good in close quarters, and with the bonus of physical resistance, they should be much tankier than they currently are. Stack that on top of the fact that they're going to be 9 veterancy, which means better melee defense, and the fact that I think they get 10 more armor than the regular variant. I think this will make a very, very strong unit for Bretonnia, in spite of the fire resistance being a bit of a pointless add-on there, in my opinion. Knights of the Lionhearted, the bodyguard of Lune. or Knights of the Realm variant who bring fear, and I think fear is amazing as on cavalry in particular, because cavalry you're usually trying to get rear charges. It's one of the things that makes Wild Riders absolutely devastating. Definitely helps Chaos Knights, Demigryphs, all those units be absolutely crazy powerful. So definitely something that could be a big deal for the Knights of the Realm. Combine that with magic attacks, once again, I don't think too important. But encourage, very nice. Good. Gonna be able to buff up your line a little bit if you need to. When you do a rear charge in, you can boost the morale of your nearby units, and otherwise you can boost up your cavalry. And given that the defenders of the Fleur de Lis right here who have Frenzy, it could be a very nice combo with them, because you use the Encourage to keep their morale up a little bit better, which means that they get more value out of Frenzy. Which could definitely be very potent. And that's moving on to the defenders, right onto the defenders of the Fleur de Lis, or the Lis. Knights of the Errant with Frenzy, and normal Knights of the Errant are pretty lackluster cavalry. I'm not a big fan of them personally, but Frenzy can make them much more competitive, especially for such a relatively cheap unit. Being able to dish out the hurt, and plus the boosted stats from being a high veterancy unit, definitely could make a very competitive pick, especially back to say Knights of the Realm or something there to encourage them, boost their leadership. Keep that frenzy going. It'll make them very good cycle chargers for the cost, I think. Then we have Bretonnia with the Wardens of Bretonnia's last one with Wardens of Montfort, which is the Mounted Yeomen with poison attacks. And I think Skirmish Cav with poison is nice because it lets you outrun your counters, whether that be flyers, whether that be or your melee counters, so your flyers or your fast ground units like say Direwolves or Warhounds. It's definitely, I think, a very cool unit. Not sure how useful it will be, but I could see it being useful in the sense that after the fight's already broken down, you can flank around with your Mounted Yeomen and start peppering your opponent from behind with poison arrows, which you normally can't do if you bring pox arrows, because the peasant bowmen are very slow and take a while to reposition. So this could be very useful. Then on to Chaos. Wow, I can't. There we go. Dead center. I can't even see it. So Chaos, of course, coming in with a lot of higher end, like the opposite of what we just saw, with much higher end units being buffed up into Regiment of Renown format. We got the weird spawn over here, which are Chaos Spawn, Demon Spew, which are Forsaken, Summoners of Rage, which are our Dragon Ogres, Mirror Guard, which are Chaos Warriors, Soul Damnation, obviously Hell Cannon, and the Swords of Chaos, which are unique Chaos Knight unit. So definitely, I think these are some of the best graphical changes. I think these are definitely some of the best models or looking of the added Regiments of Renown. I can go over them real quick. So first of all, we do have the Mirror Guard, which are the bodyguard of Sigvald. Immune to Psychology, which is huge. Chaos has massive issues when their infantry fighting against the units that cause Fear of Terror, because they don't have anything immune to Psychology except Forsaken with Frenzy. So this could be a very big boost. Combine that with increased movement speed, and that's, I think, going to help you. And it's a big boost. It's plus 10 movement. It takes them from 28 to 38, I think. So this makes them very mobile. Obviously, they fight a little better in close quarter, which is cool. But mostly the immunity, psychology, and increased movement speed, which I think for Chaos Warriors is absolutely amazing. Chaos Warriors are already pretty solid infantry to begin with. And combined with these facts, these guys probably aren't going to break very easily, and they're just going to be able to chase down enemy ranged units, support your Forsaken, and just be a very strong, like, shallow flanking unit where you don't go in too far. That sort of thing. So I think very potent. Soul Damnation, bit interesting. Increased reloads, but skill 1 damage. Gonna make it very crucial to shut the thing down for good. Artillery isn't the most common thing in a quick match, but it could definitely be a very strong unit depending on how the cost is. And of course, just being able to shoot fast with all cannon is very nice. The Demon Spew, which are Forsaken with poison attacks, I think is going to be pretty crazy, and I think this is going to make, besides the fact that it means Forsaken can much more easily stay on their chosen victims, it also means that Forsaken will be useful again if you go up against an army that happens to do like a switcheroo on you and bring something unexpected, like say heavily armored infantry. Because normally Forsaken, if your opponent brings like say a horde of Black Orcs, and you brought some Forsaken, just deal with some of the squishier Orc infantry, you're gonna find your Forsaken pretty useless against something like Black Orcs. But with poison attacks, they can at least weaken your enemy's Black Orcs, make them an easier target for units with great weapons. So situations like that, I think the poison will be very useful as well. Then the Weird Spawn. I think these could make Chaos Spawn a bit more viable because they have physical resistance, which make them a little less susceptible to ranged fire. Unlike Trolls, of course, they don't break, and Armor Sundering, which will make them a great support tool. Obviously, it could change up depending on the cost. I also do believe they have a higher weapon strength. I think standard Chaos Spawn only have 120, and these guys have 150 weapon strength, which is really cool. Plus, they obviously have a very awesome model. Then going on to the Swords of Chaos, which are the unique Chaos Knight unit, and I think this one is definitely very cool. It's basically like a Demigryph unit in size. It's same 18 on large, 24 on ultra they were displaying. Apocalyptic Charge, the map wide speed and charge speed boost, and I assume that's going to be to your whole army, is pretty cool. Definitely not bad. Guardian, same as we saw in what is it? The Riders of Goros, Sons of Goros. There we go. So similar to that, but this is Archaon's bodyguard, by the way. So that's probably why they're very powerful. But it's just a very useful like protection ability. It's cool that we're getting these bodyguard units too. I think that's pretty nice with the physical resistance buffs. But stacked on top of, and what's not mentioned here is that they get armor piercing. And normal Chaos Knights have a bit of a deficiency in damage output. They're a bit like Grail Guardians, where they hit like wet noodles, and it takes them a while to chew through things. And obviously with you can eventually, but it takes them a while. So here with fire attacks, once again, I think it's fairly pointless. But the rest of the with armor piercing, they're going to be able to dish out a hell of a lot of hurt. I think becomes sort of a super questing knight unit almost, and definitely be able to butcher enemy units. Obviously, they're a much smaller unit than normal Chaos Knights, but the improved combat stats from high veterancy, and I do believe they get more HP and all that sort of stuff, should definitely compensate. Stacked on top of armor piercing, Guardian, the extra speed and charge is just going to be awesome, I think. And this last unit for Chaos, I think the Dragon Ogres, I'm not too impressed. It's a bit of a... It's cool that they get magical attacks, I guess. It's not too useful. Chaos, once again, has good access to magic, so if you're worried about having to deal with physical resistant units, you have plenty of options already. So this isn't too important. Whether that be from spells or from units like, say, Aspiring Champions. And the Chain Lightning, once again, a bit of a novelty item. Dragon Ogres are already squishy. They're a bit of a niche unit against large. And Chain Lightning is not the greatest of spells, though, and it's single use. It's not the greatest thing. Honestly, I'm not too impressed with this unit. It might be cool aesthetically, but it's just not that good of a unit, I think. Especially not from Regiment round. But other than that, I think Chaos is very, very nicely done. Definitely one of my favorite lineups here. Then on to Norska, which obviously we've recently been getting more and more updates about Norska. Getting released along with this. We'll be getting released along with all these Regiments Renown. So we're getting the Beasts of Tashnar, which are a Warhound unit. The Icehorn Marauders, which are Marauders with shields. Soul Crusher, which is Mammoth with the Howdah on the back. Brutes of the Hound, which are Berserkers. Maws of Savagery, armored Skinwolves. And then Miststalkers, which I do believe are the generic Fimir. Not the great weapon ones, because they're dual wielding like clubs or whatever. Very cool looking units. Definitely look very nice. The Grey Mammoth is definitely like an interesting tint. I definitely think it's pretty cool. So we're going to go over the units over here real quick. So Soul Crusher and Rage ability, which is temporary physical resistance. This is going to be very useful. The War Mammoths, I think while they obviously will be cool and they'll be great in campaign against inept AI, I think that in multiplayer they're going to be a bit lackluster simply because human players will know to shut you down, to swarm you with demigods with halberds, to shoot you with handguns, to net of a mintock you and murder you that way, to kite you with arrows. There's so many ways you can shut the War Mammoth down, but with physical resistance ability you get netted and you can just deny your opponent's damage. Interesting enough, I think that with the Mammoth, and a bit of a side note here, I think if this becomes a popular unit with the physical resistance, then we might start seeing things like the Luminarch make an appearance. And Strider, which is definitely nice. Strider, it's a bit, oftentimes, you won't notice how much of a difference going through woods or marshes or whatever, going up hills makes when you're trying to move. But I've had situations where my Wild Riders were not able to catch up to to a goblin, to an orc spider, simply because of the terrain. I think it was Wild Rider or something like that. But a cavalry unit was not able to catch the giant spider, the Ragnarok spider, for the goblins with the because it has Strider. Strider can make a very big difference. It's just hard to notice sometimes. It's not well described, but very, very strong ability, I think. And this will, I think, will be a very viable unit or potentially a viable unit, at least in the cheese sense, possibly in a normal functional sense. Then of course the Marauder Berserkers, Unbreakable, and Fear. Fear, not sure it's too important because I think Norsca is going to get a lot of Fear units, though obviously Fear is never a bad thing. Unbreakable, though, I think is huge because normally the Berserkers, I think, are not. Obviously, I don't know for certain, but they do have Frenzy. But with normal morale and with how squishy of a unit they are, they're going to get shot down very quickly. They'll start breaking, they'll start wavering, and their Frenzy is going to go away, and their damage is going to tank, and then they won't be able to get max use of their Berserker ability, which takes 22, 44, and 66 seconds to proc every one of the 3 upgrades. So this is why you're making sure, basically, you're guaranteeing that you'll be able to proc off all your Berserker's traits unless your unit gets annihilated to man before that. So I think this is going to be a very strong unit. The Norseman Warhounds with Frenzy, pretty cool. Extra missile resistance. I assumed they'd get scaly skin like the normal Warhounds, but I guess not. Still, with Frenzy, it's very cool. That means they'll be able to melt through squish units much faster, and a small bonus for as large is never bad. That's sort of like that'll make him much better against skirmish cav or light cav, like say Wild Riders or Orc Cavalry. And given how many large units the Norskins have, then something like Orc Boar Boy Big Guns might become fairly popular against them, and because they have such low armor, something like the Warhounds, even with a small bonus or large, could be very potent there. Then on to the Fimir, the Miststalkers. Now, a unit that can, apologies there, a unit that does seem to be a bit like Trolls, except with better stats overall. But they do come with Stalk, which is pretty awesome, Vanguard, and Terror on a unit that, as far as I can tell, has absolutely ludicrous stats. Otherwise, they have Armor Sundering, they have Armor Piercing, they're basically crazy good Trolls. So, yeah, this is, I think, going to be a very, very strong unit. Yeah, there's not much to say. I just think this is a pretty crazy combination. Definitely going to be very useful. The Skin Wolves with Vanguard deploy. Skin Wolves, the armored variants seem to have armor piercing built in. From the original, on the stream it seemed that they had armor piercing. I don't know if that's a bonus for the Maws of Savagery or if that's something the normal ones have, because I don't have any point of comparison. So, because the Skin Wolves we saw in the footage earlier were unarmored, so I don't know if there's any weapon difference between armored and unarmored. But they definitely get Vanguard, which could be very nice for these guys. Make it easy for them to shut down heavy cav. But once again, I don't know if the armor piercing was a boost or not. And finally, the Icehorn Marauders, which are immune to Psychology and immune to Vigor. The immune to Psychology, I think, is good. The immune to Vigor is nice, but I think a unit like this is going to get murdered fairly quickly because Marauders are squishy and pretty dirt cheap normally. So obviously they'll have better stats for high veterancy, but I think the main thing is going to be that they're a holding unit, or a better holding unit than your other Marauder units. So definitely not bad. Some cool units there. And finally, the Wood Elves. So we're going to go over them real quick. Just gotta find where they are. There we go. So the Firebark Elders, which are Treekin, the Wild Hunters of Kurnus, which are Wild Riders, the Swordens of Citadel, which I do believe are actually Wildwood Rangers, even though they don't look like it. Loix Tricksters, which are Azrai, or War Dancers with Azrai Spears. Winterheart Guards, which are Eternal Guard, and then Hawkeyes of Drakira, which are Way Watchers. So going over really quick, we have the Winterheart Guards, which are Eternal Guard with shields. They're unbreakable. They have charge defense against all, which is very cool. It's just going to make them a very, very tanky unit. It's just going to make them a better line holder, basically. Eternal Guard are already ridiculously good line holders. This will make him an even better line holder. It means that something like Forsaken won't be able to annihilate him as quickly. And it doesn't mean that they won't be able to, because Eternal Guard are susceptible to Psychology. It doesn't mean that these guys won't break against a Terror Bomb or a Fear Overload. Definitely very cool. The Wild Hunters of Kurnus coming in with the Guardian ability. Wild Hunters are very good to begin with. Combine that with Guardian, and I could see this being very strong, especially if you have a pack of Wild Riders moving around, depending on how expensive these guys are, obviously. But Wild Hunters shields are already amazing cavalry for their cost. So definitely, I could see this being a very potent unit, even though it only comes with one ability. Plus, it's 9 veterancy Wild Riders, so just stupidly strong. Loix Tricksters, which lowers drought ability. And it's funny, I was talking about this with some friends, and I was saying that we should get War Dancer with stock, and that is what we got here, which I think is absolutely hilarious. The ability to the ability to cast stock, I think, is awesome. The fact that we haven't had this up until now was a bit of a disappointment for me. There were some units I wish could temporarily stock. And plus the boost to speed, very nice. Going to make him, I think, very useful. Then the Storm of Blades, extra melee attack for less melee defense. And this is another interesting trade-off, because War Dancer with Azrai Spear normally don't have the best melee attack, so it does make it a little harder for him to melt the cavalry. But I think that if you combine him with a unit to soak up damage, so something like Treekin, to take the enemy cavalry's hits, then you can just turn off the melee defense to crank up your melee attack. And I think it's 20 for 20. And you can just demolish enemy cavalry in the space of probably seconds, really. So absolutely brutal. I think this is going to be a very, very powerful unit, just because of all these units. But obviously, I don't know how the cost will be. The cost might be ludicrous as well. If it's an 1800 point War Dancer unit, then it's probably not going to be worth it. But definitely, I think, very strong. Hawkeyes of Drakira. This is another, I think, ridiculous unit. Discourage is one of the things that makes Goblobber ridiculously powerful for dwarves. Minus 16 leadership is disgusting to deal with for most factions. And here you have it on Way Watchers. Stacked on a Smoke Bomb, which means these guys are going to be very hard. And like for me, I like to play elves a lot, and as you've seen in some of my recent replays, that's what I like playing, especially now that I've gotten back into them. This is just disgusting. They're going to be able to kite very effectively. Smoke Bomb, is, assuming it's the exact same one as the Nasty Skulkers get, is a 76% debuff to speed. It means that the White Watchers will basically, you can charge them with any cavalry, and they will walk away like nothing happened if they get their Smoke Bomb off. Plus Discourage means that your units will break very easily under heavy arrow fire. So I think this is absolutely terrifying. These guys could be incredibly powerful, unless they're, once again, very expensive, then they're going to be very strong. Now the ones that Citadel Wildwood Rangers, once again, a bit of those side grades. These guys do normally get charged defense against large and woods, but they get Stalk, they get Vanguard, they get Spear and Shield. These guys are going to be very interesting. These guys are already anti-large normally, but I think these guys are going to be dedicated anti-large rather than being a multi-function unit. They're going to be more specific, and they could be interesting. Yeah. I could think in a few cases. Sorry about that. So they could be very solid. I'm not too concerned about the Vanguard, but Stalk could be nice. Especially if you need to close the gap on your opponent. For some reason, if you need to push into him. Charge defense is large, just being a super powered Eternal Guard unit. That would be very nice. And the Ironbark Elders are a bit interesting. I think this is going to make something like Turthu or Treeman or Treekin builds much more viable. Because you get fire attacks, you get fire resistance, you get the wildfire aura. And normally fire is not particular. And like I've been saying throughout most of this, fire is not the greatest thing ever, but in this situation, where Wood Elves are a faction you will sometimes see fire being used against because they bring so many tree units, or they have so many tree options, then this could be very powerful. This basically negates one of the biggest weaknesses to an Elven tree build, and or will at least mitigate it. I'm not entirely sure how much the wildfire aura reduces damage, but assuming it reduces it even by 20%, that'll be a nice counter, and definitely make Treekin much more viable. And it could definitely be very useful against, say, if someone brings a Luminarch against you, because that does fire damage. And this, even if it's like 20% reduction, that'll make Luminarch that much less effective against something like Treekin. So definitely cool upgrades. I think I'm a bit torn between liking the Elves and the Chaos most. I don't play Chaos as much, but I absolutely adore the models, and I definitely all these new units I think are amazing. To get him, they're all coming out within a week. Total War Access is you have to get an account there to get them for free. But definitely looks like a great update. Definitely looking forward to Norska. We'll definitely be doing videos on them, probably a campaign playthrough. I do hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, leave a like or subscribe down below. I appreciate you all for watching, and bye for now.